Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Q. In this video I'm looking at the Tier 7 British tech tree multirole fighter, the Typhoon. Hello there. Here we have the Typhoon on the tarmac outside my hangar. This is going to be my first review of a Tier 7 multirole fighter, which may say something about their awkward position in the game. The Typhoon was originally intended as a medium to high altitude interceptor to replace the Hawker Hurricane, but both airframe and engine were beset with problems, with an alarming tendency for the tail to fail and the aircraft to break up in flight. Delayed by the British Air Ministry's decision to concentrate resources on Spitfire and Hurricane production, the Typhoon was rushed into service in late 1941 to counter the Focke-Wulf 190, which outclassed the Spitfire 5s the RAF were flying. At the time, it was the only British fighter capable of catching the German plane. However, operations eventually led to the weakness in the tail section being found after several pilots and aircraft were lost. By 1942 that problem had been identified and the aircraft modified sufficiently to make it a reliable low-level interceptor against Luftwaffe tip-and-run nuisance raids, with squadrons operating it claiming several kills. In 1943 the plane was switched to a ground attack role, some RAF units equipping them with bombs and others with rockets. Though Typhoon pilots exaggerated their successes, the plane proved to be the RAF's best tactical strike aircraft, the Germans fearing the rocket-equipped planes in particular. In the game, the Typhoon is like many British aircraft, quite good at most of the things you would seek to do with it, but not excellent at anything. It does feature relatively quick reloading of its ordnance, and in its specialised configuration you can choose to mount either bombs or rockets. I tend to play it as a reasonably agile fighter, but it could be configured for high energy performance, albeit at low altitudes. Let's look at the aircraft statistics. Here's a spreadsheet showing all of the Tier 7 multirole fighters, of which there are 7, including 2 premium planes. If you don't know how this spreadsheet works, there's a link in the description below to a video that will explain what's going on. Have a look at that and then come back here. All of the aircraft in this comparison are in stock configuration, with ordnance mounted if any is available, equipment removed and the pilot sent back to the barracks, and all of the top modules installed. Starting with the guns, the rating is 27 and the cumulative DPS 460. If you glance across these ratings, you'll see that most of the planes here have the same or a similar rating, though some achieve it with machine guns, such as the P-47N, some with a mixture of weapons groups, such as the J-4M, and the Yak-9U achieves it with the sniper cannon. The planes with outstanding firepower are the 2 Focke-Wulf 190s, and these are amongst the aircraft you will need to avoid going head-on with, unless they're on their last few hit points. The Typhoon has a single weapons group, 4 20mm Hispano Mark V cannons mounted on the wings. The range is good at nearly 2,500 feet. The auto-aim angle, the amount you can be off target by and the game corrects your aim for you, is okay at 2.5 degrees. It's as good as any cannon on display here, with the dispersion angle being 0.6 degrees. That's the way the bullets spread out as they leave the muzzle of your gun, and that's average for this kind of weaponry. The time the guns take to overheat is 6 seconds, so some gun management will be necessary, but it could have been worse. The shell velocity is relatively high at very nearly 1,460 feet per second. You won't have to lead much at aircraft that are banking away from you. In my opinion, these are more than serviceable guns without being massively destructive ones. Turning to the ordnance, British multirole fighters are a little unusual in that often you can choose to mount either bombs or rockets in the specialised configuration. With other nations' multiroles, usually you're limited to the top module, such as the rockets on the Corsair here. For the Typhoon, I'm showing an ordnance rating of 20, which is for the rockets. If you mount the bombs, the rating is 11, which sounds a lot worse, but really isn't. You'll see the cumulative damage that bombs do is 8,600, whereas the rockets only do 8,000. However, with the rockets, you can do damage at range, roughly 3,350 feet here, and if you're careful, you may be able to destroy 3 ground targets in a sector, whereas with the bombs, you're limited to 2. That said, if you would prefer to carry bombs, you can, and that's a nice option. The reload time for both bombs and rockets is an excellent 60 seconds, much faster than any other aircraft in this comparison except the premium Focke-Wulf 190, and that carries a payload that's nearly half the size. With strengthened hardpoints, you can bring the reload time down if you wish, and I'll show you the effect of that equipment in the post-build effects section. The Corsair has similar rockets to the Typhoon. In fact, all round it's a similar plane, but has double the reload time, and only the P-47 packs a more powerful punch when attacking ground targets. However, it's a less flexible airframe. Taking the ordnance off will make the plane faster, but that isn't my recommendation. Typically, you'll try to flip a sector by destroying a mix of ground targets and aircraft. Losing the former option makes that tricky. The survivability of the Typhoon is on a par with most of the other planes here, the exception being the more robust P-47N. You have 340 hit points, which admittedly is little on the low side compared to the other multi-rolls, with the exception of the rather fragile Yak-9U at the end there, and, somewhat surprisingly, the Focke-Wulf 190D. The damage resistance figure is 50, which is adequate, and the fire resistance figure is 60, which will allow the use of an uprated engine, should that be your choice, without having to resort to using a fire extinguisher or other methods of containing the risk of or damage done by fires. The airspeed rating is 51, which is equal third worst in class, but it's a mixed bag here. The cruise speed at 283 miles an hour is good, getting off at the kind of speed you'd expect from a high-energy fighter, but the maximum boost speed at 404 miles per hour is rather disappointing, slower than anything else here except the premium Focke-Wulf 190, and that plane has what is effectively a Tier 6 engine. Unfortunately, as you'll see later, you have only one equipment slot on the engine, so if your aim is to make the Typhoon fast, you can either mount an uprated engine or a combined boost injection system alongside presumably polished skin on the airframe, but not both. The boost duration at 18 seconds is quite long, though many of the planes here have 20 seconds, and the maximum dive speed is not going to get you away from any of these multi-rolls, let alone the Tier 7 fighters. In the post-build effects section, I'll show you options for a manoeuvrability build, a speed build with an uprated engine, and a speed build with a combined boost injection system. However, though you can make the Typhoon faster, you will never make it blindingly fast. The manoeuvrability rating is 55, which, to put it in perspective, is the kind of rating you'd expect on a stiff and rather inflexible high-energy fighter. It may be third best in class here, but you'll have to work hard to beat the Corsair or particularly the Yak-9U in a one-on-one fight. When it comes to fighters, especially any of the term fighters, your best bet is to pick on them when you have a positional advantage and when they're focused on something else. If you use a manoeuvrability build on this plane, you're more or less committing to destroying your target in one pass, and the guns on the Typhoon may not be quite up to that job. If you use a speed build, you may find you can't get away quickly enough from your target if you fail to destroy it. On the other hand, you should have no problem with ground attackers, which are priority targets, or low-flying heavies and bombers. The average turn time is 11.4 seconds. Remember, your actual turn time in any given situation is dependent on your energy state and vector, so will vary, and the roll rate is a rather stodgy 90 degrees per second. The controllability at 80.6 is good for these multi-rolls best in class, and rather like some of the high-energy fighters, but you're not going to get the snappiest of responses when you issue an instruction to change direction through one or more of the control surfaces. The manoeuvrability characteristics will not degrade in a range of 234 miles per hour, which is quite good, and that's between a lower limit of 146 miles an hour and 380 miles per hour. You can exploit that by being well over 300 miles an hour when fighting a Yak-9U, for instance, because that plane will be outside its optimum range for manoeuvrability. And finally, the stall speed is 87 miles an hour, quite low, and you may be able to cause attacking opponents to stall, for instance the Corsair here, in a low speed encounter. The altitude rating of 33 is second worst in class, with only the rating for the Yak-9U being slightly worse. A word of warning here, few of the Tier 7 fighters have altitude performance as bad as this, therefore you'll spend quite a lot of your time in the yellow altitudes unless you want to see most things flying above you, a considerable disadvantage. The maximum optimum altitude is not even 4,300 feet, and the service ceiling is well below 11,000 feet. The climb rate is poor too, second worst in class, and you'll need to watch out for fighters you engage, unless they're moving slowly, attempting to climb away from you. These power to weight ratios aren't great either, being the third worst in class, and that would suggest, allowing that we don't know anything about drag in this game, that the Typhoon will not accelerate particularly well. Be cautious about slowing this plane down. Well, on paper, this plane looks like quite a challenge to fly, and, being a multi-role fighter, that's what you ought to expect. In order to fly it well, you need to be clear about how you're going to fly it and build it accordingly. In my case, My strength being dogfighting, I build the plane for manoeuvrability. I try to be careful about the engagements I pick and the situations into which I take the plane. On the other hand, if you are strong in high energy fighting, particularly if you can sense how well the plane moves in its three axes, pitch, yaw and roll, you may be able to put a high energy configuration, a speed build if you like, on the plane and do well. It's something I've yet to try, but I can see there is scope for this approach. However you choose to fly the Typhoon, unless you decide to take it off, make sure you put its ordnance to good and frequent use. Here we are back with the Typhoon at the airfield. My plane is specialised, which means I have all of the equipment and consumable slots available, but when you first get the plane, you'll see this. You have just 4 equipment slots, one on the cockpit, one on the airframe, one on the engine that is locked, and one on the outboard weapons, which is also locked. You have 5 consumable slots, one each for the cockpit, the airframe, the engine, the guns and the outboard weapons, but those for the engine and the outboard weapons are again locked. In this stock configuration, I'd suggest starting with a gun sight and one of a lightweight wing frame or polished skin. Let's see what I've done with the plane, so we'll pop it into specialised configuration. And here we are. This is a manoeuvrability build, but I've chosen to claw back some speed by mounting aerodynamic pylons. And this means my ordnance, and I prefer to use the rockets, reloads more slowly. However, the penalty is only 5 seconds, and as the ordnance reloads quickly anyway, I think that's worth bearing in order to make the plane a little faster. Let's get into the detail. For the cockpit slot, there are 2 choices of equipment: cockpit armour and a gun sight. I think the choice is pretty obvious here, as it seems unlikely you're going to build the Typhoon as a tank. So I've mounted a gun sight, and this is ultimate level equipment, fully calibrated. That gives me a 21% improvement in accuracy, that is a reduction in the dispersion of the cannons, but adversely the pilot is more likely to be injured as his or her resistance is reduced by 17%. For bonus characteristics, I've opted for a 10% improvement in the chance of causing a fire, a 10% improvement in the chance of causing critical damage to a target, and a 5% improvement in accuracy when firing at moving targets. That acts to increase your auto-aim angle so you can be off target a little bit more. The idea here is to seriously damage, I hope cripple, the targets at which I choose to shoot so they cannot fight me, whilst also improving accuracy when shooting at evasive targets. The other choices are a 5% chance of causing critical damage. You could, for instance, drop the accuracy characteristic for this one. 3% extra accuracy, that acts on the dispersion, and a reduction in the likelihood of the pilot being injured by 5%. All of those are good choices, so it's up to you to decide which you prefer. In the airframe slot, there are 4 choices of equipment, but 2 of these strengthen the plane: the reinforced skin, that improves the resistance of control surfaces to damage, and the reinforced airframe, that increases the aircraft's hit points. My aim is not to resist damage, but to avoid it entirely if I can by manoeuvring or fleeing, so these aren't my preferred choices. And that leaves the lightweight wing frame and the polished skin. The polished skin improves your cruise speed and acceleration whilst diving, and the lightweight wing frame increases your manoeuvrability. The Tier 6 Heavy, the XP54, is still a factor in my thinking, so I prefer the lightweight wing frame so I can deal with that plane by outmanoeuvring it if I encounter it. If you choose a speed build with a polished skin, it may be able to outmaneuver you, though it's likely many people flying that plane won't realise that. My lightweight wing frame is ultimate level equipment, fully calibrated. In fact, all of the equipment on this plane is. And I have an extra 18% roll manoeuvrability, an extra 4.2% manoeuvrability in turns, and a 1% increase in yaw manoeuvrability. This comes at a cost of a 6.6% reduction in my hit points and 10% reduction in the ability of the wings to resist damage. To help achieve this, I've selected all 3 bonus characteristics that improve manoeuvrability. You are, if you choose other characteristics, able to reduce but not remove the negative effects on hit points and wing damage resistance, or you could improve the cruise speed with the last of the bonus characteristics, but manoeuvrability is my priority here. Turning to the engine slot, again you have 4 choices of equipment. I'm not interested in engine armour protection, since my approach is to try to avoid taking damage at all, but the other 3 pieces of equipment are all good choices. Your selection will depend on how you intend to fly the Typhoon. In my case, I'm aiming for manoeuvrability, so the choice of a lightweight power unit is an easy one. In the post-build effects section, I'll show you what happens if you mount an uprated engine or a combined injection boost system. Note that you have just the one slot here and you can't mount both pieces of equipment that improve speed. You have to choose. A polished skin in the airframe slot and a combined injection boost system would be a good pairing. Again, my lightweight power unit is ultimate level equipment, fully calibrated, giving the improvement in manoeuvrability that you can see here, plus a little bit of improvement in the cruise speed. The drawback is that I've lost 12% of the ability of my engine to resist damage. I would have lost 17% there, but I've offset it with the first bonus characteristic that you can see here, the other two improving manoeuvrability, my focus with this build, and the cruise speed. The other choices are for more cruise speed or improved acceleration both with or without boost. Finally, on the outboard weapon slot, again you have 4 choices of equipment. I'm carrying rockets, so there's no point in using a bomb sight, but I wouldn't choose this even if I were carrying bombs. You'll use them so close to your target you won't need the extra accuracy. As for the rocket sight, extra range on the rockets is useful, but hardly critical. That leaves the strengthened hardpoints, which reduces the reload speed of your ordnance at the cost of aircraft speed, and the aerodynamic pylons, which help retain more aircraft speed, but at the cost of reload time of your ordnance. I'm conscious that the Typhoon has a poor maximum boost speed and also aware that the increase in reload time with this equipment is only about 5 seconds, so I prefer this to the strengthened hardpoints. I'll show you the effect of using strengthened hardpoints in the post-build effects section. What I get with the ultimate level fully calibrated aerodynamic pylons is an 80% improvement in rocket aerodynamics, which I calculate to be worth roughly 2.5% on cruise speed and maximum boost speed. I also get better range on the rockets and more damage inflicted by them, at the cost of reloading the ordnance 10% more slowly. The bonus characteristics I've picked all affect the rocket's performance and damage potential, as you can see, but if you mount bombs, you'll pick the other set of bonus characteristics. For consumables, in the first slot, I've picked a first aid dressing package. I'm not using an uprated engine, so the Typhoon's fire resistance hasn't been lowered, meaning I don't need to use the fire extinguisher, and if you have any of these, do sell them for credits. In the next slot, I've picked the pneumatic control assist in case I get into a dogfight with a plane that's as manoeuvrable as me, though be aware this won't help you with, for instance, Japanese fighters or Spitfires. I try to avoid taking damage, so I don't feel that I need the emergency control system to repair the control surfaces. And fire I don't see as being a regular problem on the Typhoon, so I don't choose the exhaust bleed inerting system. Next slot, I pick engine cooling. I think this is more useful to me than repairing the engine, which the bottle for manual engine restart would do, or improving the engine's thrust to get more speed. I think this adds 10 seconds to whatever boost you've got remaining, provided it's at least 1 second. I've recently had a correspondent tell me that he thinks it works differently. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Finally, I pick universal ammunition. If you use gold consumables, you already know what these do. And improved fragmentation to increase the damage the rockets do. And again, if you use these gold items, you already know what they do. So with that, let's look at how to train your pilot. I've loaded up the pilot dialog box, and as I've gone for a manoeuvrability build, my pilot training takes what is, for me, a familiar path. Provided you've got manoeuvrability or speed equipment mounted, you may have both in a hybrid configuration of course, then I prioritise Aerodynamics Expert, then Aerobatics Expert, omit this one if you have a pure speed build though, Engine Guru 1, and then Marksman 1. Next, I'd probably acquire Battle Tested or Cruise Flight. Here I'm actually on the way to one of those two with the Firefighter skill, which I'm using rather than have the skill point sit idle. Then drop it for Engine Guru 2, which will improve the aircraft speed. You could work up to Marksman 2 next, but for a manoeuvrability build, probably I'd opt for Battle Tested and Cruise Flight, and for a speed build, perhaps Resilience and even Adrenaline Rush. However, those are 15 skill point pilots and a very long way in the future, even for me. Let's see what the effects of all my choices and others are in the next part of the video. I'm going to use this spreadsheet to show you the effects of various choices on equipment, pilot skills, consumables, and so on the base figures of the aircraft. The base figures are always going to be in columns C and D. You've seen these before in the aircraft statistics section. This build is a gun sight, lightweight wing frame, lightweight power unit, and strengthened hardpoints. All ultimate level equipment, all fully calibrated, but not the build that you've just seen in the preceding section of the video because of the presence of these strengthened hardpoints instead of aerodynamic power lines. I thought I'd show you the effect of these first. Let's just turn our attention to the guns, and we have some accuracy improvements. We widened the auto-aim angle by 5%, so you can be a little bit less accurate in terms of aiming at aircraft, and the game will still allow you to hit your target. More importantly, we've got a 25% improvement in the dispersion angle. We've narrowed the cone in which the bullets spread out as they leave the muzzle of your gun, making these pretty accurate guns at 0.45 dispersion. It's very nice. Other effects, and these are important ones as far as I'm concerned, because remember, I'm trying to cripple aircraft, got a 10% improvement in the chance of fire and a 10% improvement in the chance of criticals. As we're using strengthened hardpoints, you'd expect some positive effects on ordnance, and here they are. The rating's gone up by 30. Principally, this is because the reload time has gone down by 31% to around 41 seconds. We've also managed to improve the rocket damage by 10% up to 100. Other effects, we've got 5% improvement in rocket accuracy, which probably is neither here nor there, but a significant effect, and some of you, especially if you like using ordnance, are going to find that these figures are interesting. Survivability, largely because of the use of lightweight wing frame, has been adversely affected. Lost a rating point. The big loser here is 22 hit points, 6.6% decrement. And also, if you look down here, you can see that 10% wing damage resistance has been lost. So has 12% engine damage resistance been lost, and 17% of your pilot's ability to resist injury has been lost. All common effects, particularly with that lightweight wing frame, but also other sources. One thing I do like, though, is that the fire resistance has not been affected. That means I don't have to take mitigating actions such as mounting a fire extinguisher or a special consumable, or using valuable pilot skills points to deal with the effects of fire. Airspeed, you would expect an adverse effect with strengthened hardpoints, and now it becomes clear that what's happened is that we've lost a couple of ratings point and 10 miles an hour off the cruise speed. Well, it's a high cruise speed, so you might not regret that too much. I think you probably will regret losing 23 miles an hour off the boost maximum speed. It was already low to begin with, and now it's a lot lower. We do get a boost in terms of acceleration. It's slight though. Both with boost and without boost, we get a 3% improvement. I will say that this loss of 23 miles an hour on the boost maximum speed is enough to deter me from using strengthened hardpoints. It outweighs, in my opinion, the benefit of improving the reload speed on the rockets or bombs by 19 seconds. As this is a maneuverability build with a lightweight wing frame and lightweight power unit, you'd expect some positive effects here, and we've got the rating up to 70, which is a 15-point increase. The turn time is now 9.9 seconds or thereabouts, so below 10 seconds. That's nice. Got the roll rate up to 116. That's still not great, but it's an awful lot better than this horrible figure of 90 degrees per second. We've also improved the yaw maneuverability by over 20%. Makes the aircraft fairly agile, and that plays to my strengths as a player of World of Warplanes. Might not to yours, in which case an alternative build might suit you. There's a slight adverse effect on the altitude performance. We now climb at 316 feet per second instead of 317. Just as a reminder, the pilot is a standard pilot with aerobatics expert, aerodynamics expert, engine guru 1, marksman 1, and then as a placeholder firefighter. That will be dropped probably in favour of battle tested or cruise flight, which itself will then be dropped in favour of engine guru 2 when I get the skill points. So let's move on to the next build. This build uses a gun sight, a lightweight wing frame, a lightweight power unit, and aerodynamic pylons. In other words, this is the build that you did see in the preceding section of the video. We can skip over the guns. There's no changes there, the same as the previous build. Ordnance, there is an effect, of course, and now the rating is only 21. We've gone up by 1 point. However, the effects are rather different. We have a much better improvement in the amount of damage that the rockets do, this time over 15%, 15.5% to 9,240. We have got a slight worsening of the reload time, but it's only 5.5 seconds, and I don't think that's significant. It is a 9.2% reduction. We've also managed to increase the range of the rockets to 3,681. That's by 335 feet. I don't think that's going to make a lot of difference, but it is nice to have. Other effects on the ordnance? None. Survivability, that's unchanged from previously, so we can skip over that as well. Even the survivability additional effects are the same here. The airspeed, that's gone up positively. We've gone to 53 rating, a couple of points up. We've now got the cruise speed up to 294, which is really good. We have got an improvement on the boost maximum speed, which is welcome, even though it's only 10 miles an hour, but at least it's not adverse, which was the case with the strength and hard points. I can work with this. Maneuverability, we can skip over. The effects are exactly the same as the previous build. Altitude performance, there's a tiny positive effect here. The rating point has actually gone up by 1 because we've got the climb rate up to 333 feet per second. That's 16 feet per second improvement. That's not spectacular and probably won't make a difference, but it's better than it going down. So now we need to turn our attention to other sorts of builds, speed builds. When it comes to speed builds, you are limited by the fact that there is only one equipment slot on the engine, and that means you can only use one of an uprated engine or a combined injection boost system. Here we're using the uprated engine instead of the lightweight power unit. I've also substituted in a polished skin for the lightweight wing frame. We've kept the gun sight and also the aerodynamic pylons, all ultimate level equipment, all fully calibrated. The guns are the same as the previous two builds, we can skip over those. The ordnance is the same as the preceding build, so we can skip over that as well. Survivability, the rating has still gone down to 8 points, but it's for different reasons. We've got our full complement of hit points back at 340. There's a slight adverse effect on the damage resistance, but we've lost 14 points of fire resistance. I think this is probably still high enough for you not to have to take measures against either the likelihood of fire or the damage done by fire or both. You may differ on that, in which case you may have to use a fire extinguisher or perhaps an exhaust bleed inerting system as the consumable, or maybe expend valuable skill points on from your pilot on things like fire resistance or firefighter. One good thing, although the pilot is still more likely to be injured, 17% more likely, we've lost the adverse effects on damage to wings and damage to engine from the previous build. Speed, nice positive effect. The rating has gone up by 13 points to 64. That's because we've got an 88 mile an hour improvement in the cruise speed. This aircraft is going to be generally fast throughout the game. We have managed to improve the boost maximum speed. It is only by 16 miles an hour, but at least it's better than that rather sluggish 404 miles an hour. Other effects? This 80% outboard rocket aerodynamics improvement, I've said, I think translates into about 2.5% on the cruise speed and the boost maximum speed. We've got 3% acceleration with boost, and now we've got 17% acceleration without boost, and also 10% acceleration in dive. Is this aircraft going to be fast enough under boost? Not sure. This is not the build that appeals to me, but it's here and it may appeal to you. Maneuverability, we're back to pretty much the base maneuverability. There are some very slight differences. The average turn time is worsened slightly. You probably won't notice that. The roll rate has improved slightly. Again, you probably won't notice that. And finally, your maneuverability is a little bit worse. And again, you probably won't notice that either. And on the altitude performance, we have an improvement of 19 feet per second on the climb rate to 336 feet per second. Again, I don't think you're going to notice that. So let's look at the other speed build. The final build substitutes in an ultimate level, fully calibrated combined injection boost system for the uprated engine. No change to the guns, so we'll skip over those, and also no change to the ordnance, we'll ignore that too. Survivability, that has changed. We're back up to the full 60 points of fire resistance, which I feel much more comfortable with, and you can see that these issues here haven't changed from the previous build. Airspeed, it's gone up by 10 points this time, not 13, still a big increase. And we've got 53 miles an hour improvement on the cruise speed. I think that's enough. And a 57 mile an hour improvement on what was a lackluster boost maximum speed. Now, it's still not great, but it's an awful lot better. And I can say that I prefer these improvements to speed to the one on the previous build. This is the build that I would select. The penalty is that you've lost 2.7 seconds of boost duration. We're down to 15.3 seconds, and that was mitigated by a bonus characteristic. Otherwise, it would have been worse. Just looking at the other characteristics, we've already talked about the outboard rocket dynamics. This time we've got 17% acceleration with boost, but only 3% without it. Still got the 10% acceleration in dive, and now we've got a 10% engine cooldown rate improvement. Maneuverability, that's the same as before, but I'm going to draw your attention to the fact that this build and the one preceding is going to make you possibly vulnerable to tier 6 heavies such as the XP54 and the Key 102. Keep an eye out for those. Altitude performance, now we're climbing at 416 feet per second. That's nearly 100 feet per second improvement. You will notice that. This is the speed build that I would prefer to use if I were going to use a speed build, but you'll see from the performance evaluation that's coming up that I've got no reason to move away from the maneuverability build that I prefer. The spreadsheet you see here represents what I call the performance evaluation for the Typhoon. That is the outcomes of 25 battles fought at different times of the day and different parts of the week to try and get a representative sample. No flights included here, it's all solo work. We're quite fortunate, I will point out, to be top tier 56% of the time and bottom tier only 44% of the time. I normally expect those figures to be reversed, so bear that in mind as I go through this evaluation. The class-specific missions for the Typhoon are in turquoise, headed in turquoise here. And I'll just point out that you have to both get attacking capture points and defensive kills, which can make getting 5 chevrons, a hero of the sky, quite hard in multi-roles. First key point, the win rate was 76%, and I don't fly in a lot of flights. I don't fly overpowered aircraft very much. My win rate is around 65% for all aircraft. This 76% feels quite significant. And talking of significance, if we just skip ahead quickly to the personal points, the average here was 12,471. I average across all aircraft 10,422 currently. These figures here tell me that this is statistically significant. It's not likely to be the product of chance. This means that I perform better in this aircraft because of the way I've set it up and the way that I fly it. Looking at other figures, the average margin of result was 223 positive. We won on average by 223 points. That's quite handsome. We can see that the chevrons average 2.6. I've already alluded to the fact it is quite difficult to get the chevrons with multi-roles, or at least it is the way I fly multi-roles. Managed to have 1 hero of the sky. I was slightly disappointed with that. We've already talked about personal points, but we can see that the maximum was 18,780. 1 outlier game here, very quick victory where it was only 4,775. Most of the other games were either above or pretty close to 10,000 personal points. Average rank 1.7, lots of 1s and 2s there. The worst position was 5th. Average kills 10.6, very nearly 11. The best was 19. There one outlier game, of course. Again, we only got 1 kill. Over too quickly before I could do too much. Aerial target damage average of around 4,300. The best was 7,400 plus. The worst 1,732. Average 3 ground targets destroyed per game. The best was 6 in the first game there. Worst was 1. Ground target damage averaged around about 9,500. The best here was the outlier game right at the front, start of the series, 26,000 and more. And the worst was 3,000. Capture points, that's all capture points. Average 389, the maximum was 650 with 100 coming in 1 game. The attacking capture points average 261, maximum 565 with a minimum of 80 here. Number of sectors captured averaged 3, very nearly. I tend to emphasize attacking in multi-roles more than I do defending. Best was 5 sectors captured, and one of them, few of the games only got 1 sector captured. Defensive kills, I don't tend to defend, so I only averaged just over 3. The best was 7. There are a few games here where I didn't get any defensive kills at all. And I died on average just over once per battle. The worst was 4 there. And this is a pretty strong set of figures. What it says is that I've managed to find the way to fly the Typhoon that really suits my playing style, and therefore I'm more effective in this aircraft than I am in many of the others. So let's now go and give you a flavour of how this aircraft performs when I'm flying it in battle. The battle you're about to see takes place on the plateau map. It's the Cursed Valley variant with 5 sectors in a skewed 5 spots of the die configuration, and unusually this map features double spawn points for each team, presumably because it's so big even for tier 7 aircraft. We have in the centre a tactically important garrison because that gives you easy access to the other sectors. On one axis about that garrison we have the 2 command centres, one near a spawn point for each team, and then the other axis has make-weight garrisons. The way to win this battle is not to try and possess your home sectors, the garrison and the command centre, and also the central garrison. Battles on this map tend to be fluid, and it's better to try to aim to capture one side of the map. So say this garrison, the central garrison, and the enemy command centre. And because battles are fluid, you'll probably find yourself flipping over to holding your command centre, the central garrison, and the enemy garrison. If you do that, you will win this battle. The order of battle features myself as a top tier aircraft in the Typhoon. I have a very strong BF-109 K6 as company at tier 7, and then we have 4 tier 6 planes, a ground attacker, the IL-2, an unspecialised Mosquito Heavy, an unspecialised Dornier 217M bomber, and an unspecialised A6M5, and that plane is going to struggle to get around on this map, so probably won't be that effective. The enemy has an extra tier 7. They have specialised Spitfire 9, an unspecialised P-51, these are both fighters, and then they have a specialised Junkers 288 bomber. And that matches against our tier 6 bomber. But it gets worse because their tier 6s include another bomber. Now this was before the changes implemented recently by the World of Warplanes team, where bombers are meant to be matched up evenly, although I have seen an example of a battle with uneven numbers of bombers recently. There's also a fighter, a P-51A, and a multi-role, a P-47B. And it's a big map, but even so, in terms of planes, I think the enemy have got the advantage, despite the fact we've got the K6. Let's see how the battle worked out. As we head into battle, what you'll see here is a good mix of both defensive and attacking modes for this plane. Now, I've started on, if you look at it from the back end of the map, the right-hand side of spawn, which means I'm nearest the garrison rather than the command centre, which I prefer. I always seem to be on this spawn, never seem to get the command centre. And I'm going to use 4 rockets into a particular gun emplacement here. I'm looking for one with 2 bunkers side by side, and there it is. This maximises the effect of the rockets. I'm going to use 4 to be on the safe side. I expect my team to capture this fairly quickly anyway, so if I only use 3, which I might consider doing, if I had to try and flip a sector on my own, it'd probably be a waste if I don't destroy the target. And there we go, we shoot down an air defence aircraft. We've got 1 ground target as well, and the sector is, as I expected, captured. Now you can see that 2 of the human players are immediately setting about the command centre on this side of the map, exactly as I explained in the strategy section. They're not going to the middle. They're going to try and take this command centre off the enemy. See the P-51A? I can outmaneuver that, but I'm not going to have to because he flies straight through the K6. Going head on at a K6. Interesting decision. And I size up the ground target, and again, it's one with 2 bunkers next to one another. Use all 4 rockets. I want to make sure of this. That's the second ground target down. And now we're going to set about the ADAs as well. Take that one down. Because of my manoeuvrability abilities, no problem to get onto this one. That gets finished off by my teammate. 1 more kill and we've got the command centre. And that ADA is finished off by my teammate as well. And we've successfully captured this command centre. Now, we haven't got the tactical garrison in the middle, so that's where I'm going next. So whilst we're waiting to get there, at a pinch, and particularly if you load gold munitions, you might be able to get away with 3 rockets at those bunkers which are side by side. And that could be important if it's necessary to try and flip a sector and you're going to need 3 ground targets. So bear that in mind as a possibility. It will sometimes fail, especially if you're not using the gold ordnance, and I'm not, and I didn't want to take the chance. Now, sizing up that Spitfire as I went in, trying to keep an eye on what it's doing, and this is not ideal because I'm close to getting into a turn fight with the Spitfire, and there is actually another human player here as well, and I land upon him with my guns. I can't refuse to shoot him. I know that we're close to taking the sector, so if I manage to get this 40 points, maybe my team can kill something else, and there we do it. We kill the P-47B, and now I'm in a twisty turn fight with the Spitfire, and I'm just hoping that one of my teammates will shoot him. Looks like there are some shots going in, and down he goes, so I get away with that. More attacking attempt. We're going to try and take this command centre. So the enemy team, although they've now lost their local garrison, have done exactly what we did. They've gone down the side of the map and they've taken our command centre. As I'm proceeding there, you'll see that I spot a ground attacker. This is a bot. I don't want to lose the local garrison if I can avoid it. It is also a priority target, so we're going to go and tackle that. We'll take the scenic route under the arch. Modelling isn't very good, is it? Particularly on the left-hand side. And here we are. Bread and butter work for the Typhoon. Ground attackers. Always be on the lookout for those. If you can take them out of sectors, whether you're defending or attacking, doing a good job. And now we're here. See the P-47B. Easy to outmaneuver this with this build. Probably would do it with the speed build as well, but it would take longer. And you can see those guns are pretty decent. That's a high hit pull aircraft that I took out there. Now Bots Villing addresses me. Doesn't go away very quickly. Gets a very serious fire, and I've defended the sector, I thought, but it's flipped. So now I'm going to fly out of the sector. There's no AA at the moment, of course, because the sector is resetting, but I don't want to be on top of the ADAs when they spawn back in. Now I'm coming back in. And we're going to see more ground work here. Again, picking out the side-by-side bunkers. 4 rockets in there. Now we'll shoot some of the ADAs because the heavies are already very close to me. Now you see the enemy team has actually pulled back from a pretty poor situation. They're now 3 sectors to 2 up, having been 4-1 down. There goes an ADA. Scanning to see what I want to shoot. I've got no immediate threats, which mean I can't address this ADA, and we've got it. That looks like it may be the P-47B coming in again. So I twist and turn to avoid him as he comes in. Now I'm behind him, it should be an easy kill. He's already been heavily damaged by teammates. In fact, that A6M5 takes him out. Now we need to do a little bit more attacking. Still 3-2 down. The enemy is gradually pulling themselves back into the game, even though we've got a healthy lead of around 170 points. E-51D does another head-on and loses his aircraft. To stop ramming in that. And then I decide that we've got the ground attacker going into a sector which is on the verge of being captured. I don't want to go 4-1 down. Ground attackers are a priority. I'm going to try and take this out and defend this sector if I can. Open up a little bit early with the guns here. Need to be careful about that. The game suggests you can hit things at extreme range, not optimum range. It's better to wait until you're in optimum range, but I have to be quick about this. Good fire on the ground attacker, and down it goes. With a little bit more work, we might be able to save this. Can't quite get the Zwilling. I haven't got the boost to chase him. And a Hawker Wolf appears above me, and I can kill that. That's the Lambert medal going through. 400 points in a single sortie in a multi-roll. Also a little bit far away, but I have some hopeful shots at it. Now the Zwilling is within range. Very nearly lost this, it's very close, so I need to get this aircraft killed as quickly as possible to give us a little bit of margin. Another fire on the Zwilling, and as I kill it, an ADA flies through me and destroys itself, so any margin we just got from killing the Zwilling has been lost immediately. Now I've got to try and kill this other heavy, which I think may be a Mosquito. It's not, it's an XP-50. Pretty light heavy, and it chooses to climb. Fortunately I am able to stay with it because it lost its engine, and again we get a little bit of margin. There is an artifact suggesting there's another threat in this sector, but I realised there isn't, so I'm off to now attack. The Hawker Wolf has come back, but I see the P-47B climbing without being aware of me. Easy target. Something else destroys it. Number of aircraft I could have shot down and didn't. P-51D this time doesn't go for a ram, just tries to shoot the A6M5, I think that is, whilst I'm shooting him, and doesn't really respond. And that's the hero of the sky goes through. Ground attacker, meat and drink. Get some separation, and something else kills it before I can get back on it. Now we're going in for what probably will be the final attempt at a sector capture. Last use of the ordnance. Been well used in this game, it's been significant in capturing sectors. One more ADA or similar will get the sector captured. There it is. Trying to put it down. We do, and we capture the sector, and that secures the game. And there you have it. Textbook example of how to fly the Typhoon. Looking at the outcome of this battle, we can see from the centre it's a 5 chevron battle or a grade 1 multi-role fighter. That grossed 96,322 credits, or silver if you prefer. Just over 32,000 of that came from a premium account bonus. In the message box we can see there were no expenses. I didn't lose the aircraft, so there were no repair costs. As usual, I was using what I call prepaid consumables. That is consumables I'd bought in advance, half price in a sale. Aircraft experience of 4,163, the base there is 2,602, 1,301 coming from the premium account bonus, other bonuses making up the rest. 208 for experience, 143 is the base, 65 from the premium account bonus. There's a token here for the first medal of the day, that's the Hero of the Sky badge just there, but alongside it there's also the Winged Legend and the Lambert medal. On the personal score tab, we can see that 2 of the class-specific missions are completed, those for attacking capture points and sectors captured. 4/5 complete on the defensive kills, and that's an easy 5 chevrons, that's 14 points, you need 13. Personal points of 15,845, 5 sectors captured, busy as you ought to be in this plane if you set it up like I do. 14 aerial targets destroyed and damage to those targets of 4,822, 23 critical hits coming off the cannons. Didn't lose the aircraft, 600 capture points, that was divided 200 for defending and 400 for attacking. 4 ground targets were destroyed and damage to those ground targets of 11,511. We look at the team score tab, we can see that was enough for first place, both by chevrons and personal points, and my team would have been so on the other team as well. As you might expect on such a big map, the tier 6 is struggled a little bit, so a good contribution here from the Dornier, and equally a good contribution here from the A26B. However, along with the K6 with a very good contribution there, we just managed to overmatch their 2.7s, the Junkers 288A and the Spitfire 9, and come away with a hard-fought win. That concludes my review of the Hawker Typhoon. As you've seen, the plane is not devastating in any way, but it is a capable fighter with more than useful ordnance. As with many of the multi-role fighters in the game, if you pick the right situations for the plane, you should do well in it, and if you don't, you won't. I hope you enjoyed this video, and that, if you did, you'll come and see my future content. Until then, this is the Noble Q, signing off.